Let's check in with Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine.
Good afternoon from Lviv. This is Joe Lindsley reporting every single weekday of Russia's full-scale war on Ukraine on Chicago's WGN Radio, live every day. And here's today's report. We look at the difficult news, what's happened in Kharkiv region, a story that seems is being ignored by much of the world. Russians hit Kharkiv city and the region yesterday as they continue to make an incursion into the northern part of the region. Kharkiv is incredibly vulnerable because the United States still does not give permission for Ukraine to hit Russian positions on Russian soil with American-produced weapons. But we see the flip side in the south, in the situation in the Crimean Peninsula. There, the United States has given Ukraine weapons and permission to use them on Russian-occupied Ukrainian soil, namely the Crimean Peninsula. And we have yet another major success of Ukraine destroying yet another Russian ship in the Black Sea. This ship was one of the main launchers of missiles against Ukrainian cities. So we have good success down south and difficult times up in the north. Here's my report for today at Chicago's WGN Radio with Bob Sirott.
Little Joe Lindsley.
Joe Lindsley is quickly becoming an American treasure in broadcasting.
Welcome to Ukraine Bank.
Russia and Iran's alliance has definitely deepened since the invasion of Ukraine. And let's go to Joseph Lindsley now. Joe, with the death of the Iranian president and foreign minister, do you think anything will change in that relationship?
Hey, Bob. Well, good afternoon from Lviv. I think many people, especially here in Ukraine and in Israel and all over the world, are paying close attention to this because as we look at history, it can often be the death of one such figure that can lead to sort of a house of cards collapsing and events changing quite dramatically. Thinking back to how World War I started. And of course, the death of Iran's president and foreign minister in that helicopter crash comes just about a month after Iran launched that drone and missile attack upon Israel. So it's conceivable that there's lots of things behind the scenes that maybe we won't find out about for a while. And then no matter how this accident was caused, or what it really was, there's everyone, who's trying to win will try to use such a moment to their advantage. And so that's the other part of the story. And clearly, as you can see from the list of condolences, it was the countries who side with Russia in Russia's invasion of Ukraine or who refused to condemn it, who were the first to send their heartfelt condolences for the president of Iran, in a country where people do not have freedom. And similar to Russia in that regard. So I think for around the world, I think there's probably more apprehension about it here. I think here in Ukraine, you get so used to bad events that this is just yet another one that's part of the mix. Amid all this, there still was some positive news for Ukrainians when Alexander Usyk kept his title, his world heavyweight title, by defeating Tyson Fury. And he really has really become a hero for Ukrainians. And, I didn't know this until the weekend, but, his family house in the Kyiv suburb of Bucha, the Russians, when they invaded Bucha and, sort of massacred people there, they took over his house, and there's evidence that they knew it was his house. And so they targeted that in particular. He and his family they had left, they weren't there. But his house was mined by the Russians. They took special care to mine it and to put booby traps in there. And so he's had the war, he's felt the war in a real way. And he actually had signed up to fight with territorial defense with the mayor of Kyiv and others to fight in those early months of the full-scale invasion. But then he was convinced that he could be better help to Ukraine as a boxer. And I think he's really helped keep the story of Ukraine alive. And then as we look, I think we have some very difficult news and some very good news at the same time. The good news has to do with some of these American weapons that have arrived. And the United States has given Ukraine permission to use these weapons in the occupied Crimean Peninsula because Crimea is Ukrainian territory that the Russians have occupied since 2014. So the good news is down to the south, but the bad news is up in the north, in the Kharkiv region, where the United States still refuses to let Ukraine hit Russian targets on Russian soil. And so that's why it's a very difficult situation there in Kharkiv. Yesterday, a beautiful day in Kharkiv city, a city I know well. And many people were at Central Park, this really lovely, meticulous park in the middle of the city. And I was talking with a friend. He and his wife and their newborn baby, just a few weeks old, were about to go take a walk in the park, along with many others. In fact, if it's Sunday, a beautiful Sunday in Kharkiv, I probably would have been in the same park at the same time. They got delayed. My friend had to catch up on some work. And then all of a sudden from their home, they hear that thud, the missile attack, right in the park. I saw so many videos of this the past hours. Children were playing soccer. People were playing tennis. People were strolling through the park, all different ages. And it was a horrible attack. Miraculously, everyone in the park survived. There were wounded people, but somehow everyone survived. And just about an hour after that attack, according to my friends in Kharkiv, the park was once again filled with people, which is this. I think the people of Kharkiv, it is like a different species of humanity with their insane courage. And they weren't packing up their cars and leaving the city, which a lot of people can't comprehend that. Even the people with young children, they stayed there. But at the edge of the city, it was not. People were not so lucky. The Russians also, right about the same time in the afternoon, attacked a recreational facility on a lake. There was a swimming pool, cabanas, and they directly hit this facility. There at this place, it would have been a lot of families just trying to give their kids a normal Sunday afternoon, even in the hell of war. I've swum in lakes in that region in the summer for a bit of rest, and so the place was very crowded on a Sunday afternoon. At least 11 people were killed, including a pregnant woman. And it was, it's just awful to see these videos. I saw so many pictures of the deceased as they were there trying to relax in the park at the edge of Kharkiv city. And so a direct attack on this recreational facility. And meanwhile, the fighting is still very intense. And in the northern, just about 12 miles from that park, in the northern region of the northern part of Kharkiv region. And the Russians, they moved into that little village, that little city of Volchansk. They occupied a hospital. And Ukrainians have been doing everything they can to evacuate people. I mean, they got, I think, most people out of there. When the Russians do move into Ukrainian villages, we're seeing more and more evidence of, the same stories we heard from 2022, like when they were in Uzik's hometown of Bucha, or his house in Bucha. They loot, they shoot people. There was a video of the Russians shooting the guy in a wheelchair. And then as the Ukrainians hit the hospital where the Russians had made their headquarters in this Ukrainian village or city, and there was this bizarre video. You can see the Russians, as Ukrainians were attacking the hospital, the Russians were sort of jumping out the window, and they looked like they might be drugged up. Maybe they had gotten into the hospital's medical supply, and so you see the stark contrast of these two sides here. But then and by the way, we also heard news, and the Washington Post reported that when this incursion into Kharkiv began a couple of weeks ago, the Ukrainians had trouble connecting to Starlink. And there's a lot of questions right now for Elon Musk. Why was this the case? Because Ukrainians were not able to get online and to communicate with each other. But then the big news on the good side for Ukraine, down south in the Black Sea, Ukrainians use these ATACMS, the long-range missiles provided by the United States. The White House is giving the green light for Ukrainians to hit Russian targets in the Crimean Peninsula. And yesterday they destroyed yet another Russian ship in that seaport of Sevastopol. And this is now about at least 11 Russian ships out of the 55 in the Black Sea Fleet have been destroyed. And the ship that was hit in the past hours was one of the main missile launchers that was used to attack Ukrainian cities like Odessa, like Kyiv. So this is a huge victory to protect many Ukrainian cities, even as Kharkiv is, sort of unprotected because of this success in the Black Sea. This will do a lot. And some speculation that this might have been the last major Russian missile carrier in the Black Sea. And it's notable that that ship was in the port at Sevastopol, but most of Russia's Black Sea fleet has moved to Novorossiysk, which is a mainland Russia port. They had to move their fleet there to protect it from these attacks. But as we talked about on Friday, the Ukrainians had this amazing, like Star Wars Flight of the Valkyries drone attack all in that port deep into Russian mainland. So we see Ukrainian pressure very strong in the Black Sea. And meanwhile, the Kingdom of Denmark has announced that they are trying to get another Patriot missile system to Ukraine to protect cities like Kharkiv.
Very impressive what the Ukrainians have done in the Black Sea. And I'll tell you what also is impressive and inspiring, the way the Ukrainians just returned to that park after that awful, awful attack. And the other thing I was thinking about as you described the idyllic park, Joseph, and this is very troubling, that horrible attack. I watch a lot of news, and I don't know that was even covered on the news. Something like that. It's kind of taken page 2 now. There are a lot of important things going on in the world, true, but we shouldn't forget what's going on where you are.
Indeed, I saw the new president, the outgoing president of Taiwan, was interviewed by the BBC. Comprehensive interview, never once mentioned Ukraine and Russia, even though it's so analogous. So we do see this falling out of the news, even though for those who Iran and Russia and others and China seem to be allied, they're paying attention. Is the West paying attention? But at least these weapons from America are making a difference.
We're paying attention to you. Thanks for bringing us the story from Ukraine every day, Joe. We'll talk tomorrow.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Що сказав?
Well, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?